First reading from Joshua 2 through 21. The king of Jericho was told, "Some Israelites have come here tonight to search out the land." Then the king of Jericho sent orders to Rahab, "Bring out the men who have come to you, who entered your house, for they have come only to search out the whole land." But the woman took the 2 men and hid them. Then she said, "True, the men came to me, but I did not know where they came from. And when it was time to close the gate at dark, the men went out. Where the men went, I do not know. Pursue them quickly, you can overtake them." She had, however, brought them up to the roof and hidden them with the stalks of flax that she had laid out on the roof. So the men pursued them on the way to the Jordan as far as the fords. As soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut. Before they went to sleep, she came up to them on the roof and said to the men, "I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that the dread of you has fallen on us, and that all the inhabitants of the land melt in fear before you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you, and when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the 2 kings of the Amorites that were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. As soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no courage left in us because of you. The Lord your God is indeed God in heaven above and on earth below. Now then, since I have dealt kindly with you, swear to me by the Lord that you in turn will kindly deal with my family. Give me a sign of good faith that you will spare my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and deliver our lives from death." The men said to her, "Our life for yours? If you do not tell this business of ours, then we will deal kindly and faithfully with you when the Lord gives us the land." Then she let them down by a rope through the window, for her house was on the outer side of the city wall, and she resided within the wall itself. She said to them, "Go toward the hill country, so that the pursuers may not come upon you. Hide yourselves there 3 days, until the pursuers have returned, and then afterward you may go on your way." The men said to her, "We will be released from this oath that you have made us swear to you if we invade the land, and you do not tie this crimson cord in the window through which you let us down, and you do not gather into your house your father and mother, your brothers, and all your family. If any of you go out of the doors of your house into the street, they shall be responsible for their own death, and we shall be innocent. But if a hand is laid upon any of you who are within the house, we shall bear the responsibility for their death. But if you tell the business of ours, then we shall be released from this oath that you made us swear to you." She said, "According to your words, so be it." She sent them away, and they departed. She then tied the crimson cord in the window. Word of God, word of life. The gospel is from John 13, chapter 33 to 38. Jesus said, "Little children, I am with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and as I said to the Jews, so I now say to you, where I am going, you cannot follow. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. You should also love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, where are you going?" Jesus answered, "Where I am going, you cannot follow me now, but you will follow afterward." Peter said to him, "Lord, why can I not follow you now? I will lay down my life for you." Jesus answered, "Will you lay down your life for me? Very truly, I tell you, before the cock crows, you will have denied me 3 times. Word of God, word of life.
Thanks be to God.
In our sermon series this month, we are talking about stewardship. Last week, Pastor Paul talked about stewardship is worship. This week, our focus is stewardship is service. It makes sense to put them in a sequence like that because being a good steward is a natural outgrowth of living our lives in worship. In fact, at the end of our worship time, We send one another out into the world with a reminder that there is much to do in service to the world by saying, the worship has ended, but now the service really begins. Go in peace and serve the Lord. I was waiting for that. But we're not there yet, so don't be gathering up your things quite yet. Before we go too far into the sermon, let's remind ourselves what we mean when we are talking about stewardship. A steward is not one that owns things, but instead a steward is put in place to care for the things that belong to someone else. A steward is a caretaker. We are the stewards for the things that God has put into our care, and ultimately everything belongs to God. In a world of whoever has the most toys win, this is a tough concept for some of us to understand well. But when we talk about stewardship, this idea that we are caretakers for God's world is what is at the core of all conversations about stewardship. When I think of a great example of wonderful stewards, I can't help but think about those who serve and those who have served in our military. And I'm going to take an extra step and today add the police, fire department, and first responders into that category. They live out this idea that stewardship is service every single day. They are ready to put their lives on the line to save others. And sometimes they might be saving a friend or someone that they know. But in most cases, they put their lives on the line to save a complete stranger. Here in Las Vegas, we just saw this come to life in the very worst of circumstances, right? Rahab, one of the heroines of the Old Testament, did the very same thing. She recognized very quickly that God's people, the Israelites, were on the move toward her city of Jericho. She knew that it was up to her to act quickly, not only to protect herself, but especially to protect her family. When the spies came, she knew that she could help them. And in exchange, they saved her family and welcomed all of them into the great family of God. Rahab, as it turns out, is one of just 4 women who are mentioned in the genealogy of Jesus. Her service to God's people was important, and it made a bigger impact than she ever could have known. Most of us, we move through our daily lives, and we do so with acts of service, and we do them without thinking. We care for God's world. We care for our pets and animals. We care for creation. We recycle. We pick up litter. We care for our families and our friends. We are careful with our wallets, and we try to make smart choices about our money. And we don't really stop to think about how those things make an impact. But trust me, they do. It's small and big ways that we live out our lives of service to God and to one another. It's Veterans Day weekend, and over the last years, I've noticed that when you tell veterans, thank you for your service, it's certainly appreciated. But there's an element of awkwardness because most members of the military and the veterans that I know don't really need or want to hear that. And in fact, it's an element of fuss over them that they don't really know what to do with. Am I right? Yeah. I say this because I have 2 brothers who are both retired Marines, and both have seen their fair share of action. My husband has 2, as you just saw. He served in the Navy. So my 2 Marines are very thankful to my Navy guy that he gave them a ride a few times. Well done. If I've shared about my brothers before, well, you get to hear it again because these 2 guys are 2 of my heroes. there they are. That was my wedding day, and I made them wear their dress blues, and they really weren't happy with me. My oldest brother, Jim, who graduated from high school and joined the Marines just a few months later. He, as an enlisted grunt, he worked his way up through the infantry division, saw some action in the Gulf War, and retired as a gunnery sergeant after a couple tours in Iraq. When he retired, he was teaching other Marines about mountain warfare before they were sent off to Afghanistan. He had, as I said, a couple of tours in Iraq, and his youngest son was born while he was there. He's, if I'm looking, let's see, he's the one on that side. That'd be the right, I suppose. My other brother, John, he's the middle child, okay? And he enlisted a few years after he graduated from high school. And he started out as a mechanic for LAVs and then got this amazing deal where the Marine Corps actually sent him to college and then officer school, and he became an officer. It was very cool. Well, Thanksgiving morning in 2004, I was quite excited because I was home visiting my mom. I was meeting my nephew, who was a month old, for the very first time, and I was bringing home this guy that I was dating named Jeff. So it was quite a big Thanksgiving. But that morning, I got woken up, and there was a phone call from my sister-in-law, John's wife, Jenna, who is in North Carolina, and she called to say that she wanted to talk to me because she had to talk to my mom to tell my mom that my brother had been injured in Iraq. Tough morning. Apparently, a roadside IED had gone off, and a piece of shrapnel had gone through my brother's foot. After much worry, we didn't exactly know what all that really meant, but we knew he was okay enough that he was able to call his wife himself. And we knew that he was going to be okay. It wasn't a life-threatening injury, but it was still scary enough. So after I got home, he thankfully was transferred to Bethesda Naval Hospital, which just happened to be less than an hour from where I was living and working at the time. So we all kind of jumped into help mode. My sister-in-law brought the kids up. She stayed at the hospital. I watched the kids. My congregation was really wonderful in giving me whatever time I needed to do whatever had to be done. I had the kids for about a week, and then they went off and they stayed with other family for about 2 or 3 weeks after that. They got my brother stabilized. They put a halo around his foot. Do you know what that is? It's basically this big old thing with these little wires that kind of keep everything in place. So his foot was completely immobilized. And the plan was that they were going to bring his foot together to close the wound. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there are tons of tiny little bones in your foot. And just messing up one of them messes up your whole foot. Okay? So my brother was in for quite an ordeal, and they were going to eventually fuse his foot together. And he went through quite a lot. He was at the hospital for a long time, and then he was able to go home, but he still had to come back for treatments and surgeries. And between the end of November and the middle part of April, he had 17 surgeries on his foot. You don't think about a foot injury being quite that big of a deal. And I remember going to visit him a couple times a week the whole time he was there, and I remember one day him sitting down, obviously he was sitting down, I was sitting down with him, and he said to me, I'm thinking about just having him cut off my foot. And I was completely grossed out, I have to tell you, because the thought just made my stomach churn. But I'd seen the injuries, and that didn't make my stomach feel better either. So he said to me, if I do that, then I'm going to have mobility in my life. I'm going to be able to walk. I'm going to be able to run. I'm going to be able to ride my bike, play with my kids who were 9 years old at the time. And I'm going to be able to live life. If I don't do that, my foot is going to be fused together, and I'm not going to be able to do any of the things I like to do. So he decided to have his foot amputated. And so while that happened, I went to North Carolina. His wife came to Maryland, and we basically swapped places, and he had his surgery. And that was April. And in September, he and my oldest brother walked me down the aisle when I got married. Since then, my brother has shown extraordinary strength. He ran a marathon. He got accepted and graduated from the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey. He played in the Wounded Warrior Games not once but twice, and he won the title of Ultimate Champion both years. And those years, the Marine Corps won the Wounded Warrior Games, so hoorah, right, Frank? Okay, hoorah. And he's an extraordinary person. When he retired from the Marine Corps, he knew he wasn't done working. So what did he decide to do? Go back to school and get his certification so that he could now make prosthetics for other amputees, and that's what he does for a living. So he has taken what happened to him and completely not let it define who he is, which is an amazing thing. And I know that we have so many people who have served in the military, and God bless each and every one of you. Some of you have wounds that you can see, and I know some of you have wounds that you can't. So we continue to uphold and give thanks for your service and for all that's meant for your life. I appreciate you letting me brag on my brothers a bit. Some other time, I will tell you about my other brother, Jim, who is a retired Marine, who is now a Baptist pastor. It's a long story. And boy, you could see our conversations are really interesting sometimes. But no, I love both of my brothers very, very, very much, and they are great blessings to my life. And the reason I really wanted to share the story, John's story, with you is because when we think about our journeys of service, we don't know where that service will take us. Rahab didn't know that she would end up being an ancestor of the Messiah, the Christ, the one who would save the world. And I guarantee you that when John was in high school, we had no idea where his life would go. Really, we did not think it was going to go as well as it has. But when we follow Jesus' commandment to love one another just as he first loved us, we are opening ourselves not just to the opportunities to serve humanity for the greater good, but we are opening ourselves to the adventures of faith that can lead us to extraordinary places and experiences that we can't even imagine now. Today with our Stewardship Campaign, you're going to be getting your packets. And in there is highlighted some of the dreams that New Song has for the future, the ways that we together can serve God and one another and the greater community. And if you're a guest or a visitor, it's just Stewardship Week. But if you're not, we need your help to make it happen. As the ministry teams of the congregation start putting together their spending plans and their budgets for the coming year, we are getting excited by the different ways that God is calling us to serve people. And as we watch the steady progress of the new building, the teachers are already making plans for the future and the ways that they will use the space more creatively to serve the kids and their families. And as we chip away at our debt, we will have more resources freed up to serve the people in our church and our community. We have been given so many gifts and blessings in our lives. They have come to us from a Creator who loves us and a Redeemer who laid down his life to save us from our worst selves. Let us respond to those gifts with thanksgiving and expressing our thanks by serving one another just as we have been served. Amen.